From your startup screen, browse to the Chapter 18 folder and open the file Chapter 18 Guide Grids. There's no getting away from it. Guide grids are for the sticklers amongst us. The people who want their documentation to look exactly the same. They want their north part of the building in the same place on every single sheet. As a CAD manager, it drove me nuts that people couldn't manage to do that. And its simplicity itself in Revit. Let's take a look at a sheet that already has a guide grid set up. In your project browser, scroll down to M501 and open the sheet. This has a guide grid on it. It's a guide grid and it has a name North. So let's take a look at the process for creating one of these. Open M502 and from the View tab on the Sheet Composition panel, click on Guide Grid. We can either choose an existing guide grid or create a new one. Let's create a new one and we'll call it Center. Click on OK. This gives us a guide grid which we can move and stretch to suit our project. We could move it or size it in such a way that the final intersection of these lines coincides with a grid intersection. But we don't know that until we place a view on the sheet. So let's go and grab one of our center sections and drag it onto the sheet. I'll place the view on the sheet and then take a look at the guide grid. Let's just stretch it a little bit more and then select the viewport. I can move the viewport using grid intersections and then find an intersection on the guide grid. I can now stretch the guide grid so that we now have that last intersection. And that's done. Let's just scroll down and have a look at the other sheets. Here's M504. If I open 504, I can scroll down in the Properties palette and under the other section we have Guide Grid, and I can set that to Center. I can now drag my Level 2 center plan onto the sheet. That's if I had one preset up. But let's do that right now. There's my Level 2 HVAC duct plan, and I'd like to have these dependent views set up from it. Right-click on my plan and apply those dependent views to Level 2 HVAC duct plan. The naming of these won't be correct and I will have to go into these and name them afterwards, but I can double click on these and find my center plan. We can drag that onto the sheet and using the guide grid move my viewport using the same intersection points. Now this looks all too easy, except when you get onto a bigger project. I don't want to have to go through each sheet and assign the guide grid. So let's go back to my schedule. On my sheet list, let's look at the fields. If I scroll down in available fields, I can pick up guide grid and add it to the scheduled fields. You can now see that we've got our guide grids displayed in the schedule. I keep reinforcing the fact that I don't like work. So here's a little tip for filling out all the rest. Let's go to Filter and filter by sheet name, and I'll say it contains North. I have to be very specific here and have this case sensitive. I now want to go to Sorting and Grouping and not itemize every instance, and click on OK. We now have one North that's assigned and one that isn't. If I click on there, come back to Filters and remove the filter and make sure that I itemize every instance. You can see that we've got Center and that's already done. All we need to do now is assign the South ones. We can check this on the sheets, and each center view has the center guide grid. Consistent documentation is easy